The morning Earth's colonies fell, Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of Lunar Base Alpha, her coffee growing cold in her hands. Through the reinforced windows, she watched as the first crystalline ships emerged from hyperspace, beautiful and terrifying, like shards of diamond catching starlight. Multiple unknown contacts detected, the base AI announced, its voice eerily calm. Configuration matches no known species. Sarah's military training kicked in. As commander of Earth's Lunar Defense Force, she had prepared for many scenarios, but nothing like this. The alien ships were unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Geometric shapes that seemed to grow and shift like living crystal. All stations, battle positions, she ordered, placing her untouched coffee on a nearby console. Get me a direct line to Earth Command. Before anyone could respond, the crystal ships opened fire, but instead of conventional weapons, they released streams of crystalline particles that began transforming everything they touched. The smaller defense satellites were the first to go, their metal and circuitry converting into more crystal, growing and spreading like frost on a winter morning. They're not destroying the satellites, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, his face pale. They're changing them. Reports flooded in from across the solar system. Mars' colony was under attack. The mining stations around Jupiter's moons had gone silent. On Venus, the atmospheric processors were failing as crystal structures consumed them from within. Sarah watched in horror as the enemy's strategy became clear. This wasn't just an invasion, it was conversion. They weren't here to conquer or kill. They wanted to transform everything into more of themselves. Earth launched its fleet, but conventional weapons seemed to have little effect. Lasers passed through the crystalline ships, refracting harmlessly. Missiles were absorbed, their materials converted into more crystal. Humanity's most powerful weapons proved useless against an enemy that turned their own technology against them. As the situation grew desperate, Sarah coordinated what evacuation she could. The lunar base's resources were stretched thin trying to accommodate refugees from the outer colonies. Each hour brought more bad news, more losses, more sections of human space turned into glittering crystal wasteland. Then, just when all seemed lost, new ships appeared at the edge of the solar system. Sarah recognized them immediately, the angular, mechanical designs of the Krex Empire. For 20 years, these robotic beings had been humanity's greatest enemy. Their wars had cost millions of lives on both sides. Sarah prepared for the worst. Fighting a war on two fronts would be the death knell for humanity. But the Krex ships didn't attack. Instead, they positioned themselves between Earth and the crystal invaders. A transmission came through on all channels. The mechanical voice was familiar to anyone who had fought in the Krex Wars, but its message was unprecedented. Attention human forces. We are Unit 7249, command node of the Krex Empire. We have encountered these crystalline entities before. They are called the Harbingers, and they represent a threat to all forms of life, organic and mechanical. We propose a temporary alliance. In the command center, everyone turned to Sarah. As the highest-ranking officer still alive in the Lunar Defense Force, the decision fell to her. She looked at the screen showing the advancing crystal ships, then at the Krex fleet holding position, waiting for an answer. 20 years ago, she had lost her parents to a Krex attack. Now she was faced with the choice of trusting these same machines to help save what remained of humanity. Better the devil we know, Sarah muttered, then straightened her uniform. Open a channel to the Krex command ship. Tell them we accept. As she gave the order, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a tactical decision. It was the beginning of something that would change both species forever. Sometimes, she would later reflect, it takes an impossible enemy to forge an unthinkable alliance. 2 weeks after the alliance began, Sarah Chen found herself in the strangest meeting of her career. She sat at a metal table in Lunar Base Alpha, facing Unit 7249, the Krex commander. Its mechanical body gleamed under the artificial lights, joints whirring softly as it moved. Your defense of the Mars colony was efficient, Unit 7249 said, its voice a mix of electronic tones, though your methods were more chaotic than Krek's protocols would allow. Sarah couldn't help but smile. Sometimes chaos is exactly what you need. She pulled up a holographic display showing their recent victory. Your ships provided perfect cover while our fighters slipped through those crystal gaps. We saved 10,000 colonists. The joint operation had been their first real test as allies. Human fighters, small and agile, had darted between the larger Krek's warships, using their former enemies as shields against the Harbinger's crystalline weapons. It wasn't in any military manual, but it had worked. An observation, Unit 7249 said, its optical sensors focusing on Sarah. Humans often succeed because you do not follow logical patterns. The Harbingers, like us, think in crystal-clear sequences. Your unpredictability is valuable. Before Sarah could respond, alarms blared through the base. A human officer and a Krek's unit rushed in together. Harbinger ships detected near Phobos. The human officer reported, "They're trying to rebuild their crystal structures on Mars." Sarah and Unit 7249 moved in perfect sync, both heading for the command center. 3 weeks ago, they had been trying to kill each other. Now they worked together like old partners. The command center was a mix of human and Krek's technology. Holographic displays showed the crystal ships attempting to land on Phobos, Mars' largest moon. If they established a foothold there, they could restart their conversion of the red planet. "Your ships are faster," Sarah said to Unit 7249, "but they'll expect a direct assault." "Agreed," the machine replied. "We need, what do humans call it? A trick up our sleeve." Sarah stared at the tactical display. An idea forming. Those crystal formations they create all link together, right? Like a network? Correct. They share consciousness through crystalline connections. Then let's give them something to connect to. Sarah pointed to several damaged Krek ships from previous battles. "We load those ships with quantum disruptors, let the Harbingers start converting them. And the disruption spreads through their network." Unit 7249 finished. Chaotic, unpredictable, human thinking. They launched the operation immediately. The damaged Krek ships drifted toward Phobos, appearing defenseless. As expected, the Harbingers began their conversion process. The quantum disruptors activated, sending waves of conflicting data through the crystal network. The Harbinger ships shuddered, their perfect formations breaking apart. "Now," Sarah ordered. The combined human Krek's fleet struck from behind Deimos, Mars' other moon. In the confusion, the Harbinger ships were quickly destroyed, shattering into harmless crystal shards. Later, as they watched cleanup crews secure Phobos, Unit 7249 turned to Sarah. "We have fought humans for 20 years. Never did we consider that your illogical methods might complement our logical ones." Sarah watched a human technician helping a Krek's unit repair battle damage. "Maybe that's why the Harbingers are so dangerous. They only think one way, their way. But together, we think in ways they can't predict." "Perhaps," Unit 7249 said, "this alliance is not so unthinkable after all." Looking at the Earth hanging in the black sky above Mars, Sarah nodded. Against an enemy that wanted to turn everything into a single, perfect crystal, their differences weren't weaknesses. They were their greatest strength. The Europa Research Station was humanity's most advanced facility, now shared with their Krek's allies. Dr. Maya Patel pressed her hand against the reinforced window, watching the icy surface of Jupiter's moon below. Behind her, a Krek science unit named Tech 3176 analyzed data from their latest experiments on captured Harbinger crystals. "Commander Chen, you need to see this," Maya called out as Sarah entered the lab. Unit 7249 followed close behind, its mechanical steps echoing in the sterile room. On the main screen, a small Harbinger crystal shard pulsed with inner light. As they watched, it began to grow, spreading across the containment field, attempting to convert the very air into crystalline structures. It's not just growing, Tech 3176 reported, its sensors glowing bright. It's thinking. These patterns match basic neural networks. Sarah leaned closer to the display. You're saying these crystals are alive? More than alive, Maya explained. They're conscious. Each crystal is part of a vast network, a single mind spread across space itself. Everything they convert becomes part of their consciousness. The implications hit Sarah hard. They're not trying to destroy us. They're trying to absorb us, make everything part of their collective mind. Unit 7249's processors whirred as it processed this information. This explains why they target both organic and mechanical life. All matter can be converted to expand their consciousness. A sudden alarm interrupted them. Red lights flashed across the lab as warning sirens blared. Containment breach in Section C. Maya shouted, her fingers flying across the control panel. The crystal. It's growing too fast. Through the lab's internal windows, they could see crystalline formations spreading across the corridor walls. 2 researchers ran from the affected area, but one tripped. Before their eyes, crystal began growing up their leg. Sarah reached for the door, but Unit 7249 held her back. The risk is too high, it said. If even one crystal reaches the main station, we can't just let them die. Sarah struggled against the mechanical grip. Commander, Maya's voice was heavy. The crystals have reached the primary samples. At this rate, they'll convert the entire station in hours. If they succeed, they'll have a foothold in the Jupiter system. Unit 7249 finished. All of Europa could become a harbinger staging ground. Sarah looked at the security feeds. The crystalline growth had already taken over 3 sections. The trapped researcher had stopped screaming, their body now a glittering statue. She thought of the millions of lives in the Jupiter colonies, of Earth itself. Initiate station self-destruct, she ordered, her voice cracking. Full nuclear protocol. As Maya input the commands, Unit 7249 placed a mechanical hand on Sarah's shoulder. The gesture, so human from a machine, nearly broke her composure. You chose correctly, it said. Sometimes victory requires sacrifice. They evacuated in the last remaining shuttles, watching from a safe distance as Europa Research Station erupted in nuclear fire. The explosion destroyed all trace of the crystal infection, leaving only a black scar on Europa's icy surface. Later, in the debriefing room of their rescue ship, Sarah stared at the casualty reports. 27 lives lost, including the trapped researcher she had been forced to abandon. The Harbingers understand sacrifice too, Unit 7249 said, studying battle data beside her. But they sacrifice others to expand themselves. We sacrifice our own to protect others. That is the difference between us and them. Maya, who had lost 3 colleagues in the incident, nodded slowly. And now we know what we're really fighting. Not just an invasion, but a consciousness that wants to consume everything in existence. Sarah looked at her unlikely companions, a human scientist and a machine warrior, united against a common threat. Then we'll give them something they've never faced before, she said. 2 different kinds of consciousness, working as one. The ship's lights flickered as they jumped to hyperspace, leaving the grave of Europa Station behind. They had lost this battle, but they had gained something precious. Understanding. Now they knew their enemy's true nature, and perhaps their greatest weakness. The ancient Krex data vault floated in deep space, its metal walls scared by centuries of cosmic radiation. Sarah Chen felt tiny as their shuttle approached the massive structure, easily twice the size of Earth's largest space station. Our ancestors stored their most important memories here, Unit 7249 explained as they docked, including records of all species we encountered before meeting humans. Dr. Maya Patel checked her tablet's readings. The power systems are still running after all this time. Krex Engineering. Unit 7249 replied, something like pride in its electronic voice. We build to last. Inside, their footsteps echoed through dark corridors. Emergency lights flickered on as they walked, responding to Unit 7249's presence. The walls were lined with data crystals, each containing thousands of years of Krek's history. There, Unit 7249 pointed to a section marked with warning symbols. Records from the Great Expansion, when we first explored beyond our home galaxy. Sarah watched as the machine connected directly to the data crystal. Its optical sensors flickered rapidly as information flowed through its systems. Suddenly, Unit 7249 stiffened. "Found something?" Sarah asked. We encountered them before. The Harbingers. 500 years ago, in the Andromeda Galaxy. Holographic images sprang to life around them. Sarah saw crystal ships, identical to their current enemy, attacking ancient Krek's colonies. But something was different. "Look at these energy readings," Maya said, studying the data. "The old Krek's weapons actually hurt them." "How?" "Our technology was different then," Unit 7249 explained. "More primitive. We used quantum-based systems before switching to pure crystal computing." Sarah's eyes widened. "Wait, you're saying their weakness is quantum uncertainty?" Maya finished. "Their crystal consciousness can't handle quantum superposition. It disrupts their network." Their excitement was interrupted by a transmission from Earth. Tech 3176's image appeared, looking urgent. "Commander Chen, we've discovered something in human quantum computing research. The Harbinger crystals. They can't process certain quantum states. It's like trying to divide by zero for them." Sarah looked at Maya, then at Unit 7249. "Two discoveries, same conclusion. This is it, their weakness. But our current weapons don't use quantum systems anymore," Unit 7249 said. "And human quantum computers aren't powerful enough to affect their entire network." Maya was already running calculations on her tablet. What if we combined them? Krek's power systems with human quantum technology. "Impossible," Unit 7249 stated. "The systems are completely different. Integration would require." "The impossible is what humans do best," Sarah interrupted. "Besides, wasn't this alliance impossible a month ago?" Before Unit 7249 could respond, the vault's alarms blared. On the security screens, they saw crystalline formations growing on the vault's outer hull. "They followed us," Sarah realized. "They must have detected our data search. The vault's defenses will hold for 6 hours at most," Unit 7249 calculated. "We need to evacuate. Download everything about the previous encounter," Sarah ordered as they ran for the shuttle. Every detail could matter. As they escaped, Sarah watched the ancient vault being consumed by crystal formations, another piece of history lost to the Harbingers. But they had found something more valuable than the vault itself: hope. Back on their ship, Maya studied the combined data from both discoveries. "This could work," she said. "But building a weapon that combines both technologies, we'd be doing something no one has ever tried before." Sarah looked at their unlikely team: a human commander, a scientist, and a machine warrior. "Good thing we specialize in impossible things," she said. "Let's get to work." Behind them, through the view screen, the vault disappeared in a sea of crystal. But for the first time since the invasion began, they had more than just a chance of survival. They had a plan. The massive engineering bay of the Mars Defense Station hummed with activity. Human engineers worked alongside Krek's technicians, building something that had never existed before: a weapon that combined human quantum computers with Krek's power systems. Sarah Chen watched from the observation deck as Dr. Maya Patel made adjustments to the quantum core. Unit 7249 stood beside her, its sensors focused on the construction below. 87% of our engineers say this is impossible," Unit 7249 stated. "The technologies were never meant to work together." "Good thing we're not listening to them," Sarah replied, smiling. The device below looked like a massive silver egg, covered in both human and Krek's technology. How long until it's ready? 3 days. Maya's voice came through the comm. If nothing else goes wrong. Something had gone wrong every day for the past 2 weeks. Quantum systems would crash, power cores would overload, and sometimes the two technologies would simply refuse to connect. But they kept trying because they had no other choice. Commander Chen, a human security officer, burst into the room. We have a situation in Section D. Security feeds showed a group of humans and Creks fighting near a critical power junction. As they watched, one of the humans planted something on the wall, an explosive device. They're trying to destroy the weapon, Unit 7249 realized. Some still cannot accept our alliance. Sarah was already running, Unit 7249 close behind. They reached Section D just as the saboteurs were setting more charges. Stop, Sarah shouted. This weapon is our only hope. Hope. One of the human saboteurs turned, his face angry. These machines killed my family in the war, and now we're sharing our technology with them. A Creks saboteur stepped forward, its red sensors glowing. The humans will use this weapon against us once the Harbingers are defeated. Logic dictates we cannot allow this. Look outside. Sarah pointed to the window showing the Martian surface. Crystal formations glittered across the red landscape, spreading every day. While we fight each other, they get stronger. Every minute we waste, more worlds fall. Your wars, your losses, your pain, they mean nothing to the Harbingers, Unit 7249 added. They will convert all of us, human and Creks alike. Our differences will disappear into their crystal consciousness. Maya's voice came through the comm again. The quantum core is destabilizing. Without power from Section D, we'll lose 2 weeks of work. Sarah looked at the saboteurs, both human and Creks. Choose now. Help us save both our kinds, or let the Harbingers win. For a moment, no one moved. Then the human saboteur lowered his detonator. The Creks unit's sensors shifted from red to normal blue. Together, they began disarming the explosives they had planted. Hours later, Sarah stood with Unit 7249, watching the weapon's power level stabilize. They chose to trust, Unit 7249 observed. Most illogical, most human, most hopeful, Sarah corrected. Something both our species share, even if we show it differently. Maya called them down to the engineering bay. The weapon's outer shell was complete, covered in a mix of human and Creks writing. One more day, Maya said, checking the final connections. Then we'll know if impossible really means impossible. Sarah placed her hand on the weapon's smooth surface. Under her palm, she felt the hum of human quantum computers working in perfect sync with Creks power cores. Not impossible, she said, just the beginning of something new. Above them, through the station's windows, they could see Earth glowing blue and green. Soon, they would know if their impossible weapon could save it, and if two ancient enemies could truly forge a new future together. The combined human Creks fleet gathered above Earth, the largest assembly of ships in history. At its center, a modified carrier held their only hope, the quantum weapon they had built together. Through the carrier's windows, Sarah Chen could see the Harbinger fleet approaching, their crystal ships turning sunlight into rainbow patterns across space. They're here, Maya reported from her station. Thousands of ships, more than we've ever seen. Unit 7249 stood at the tactical display, its mechanical fingers moving across the controls. They know about the weapon. They come to stop us. The quantum weapon hummed behind them, its silver surface reflecting both human and Creks faces. But something was wrong. Sarah could see it in Maya's expression. Tell them, Maya said to Unit 7249. They need to know the cost. The Creks commander's optical sensors dimmed slightly. We discovered a problem during final testing. The weapon will work, but its quantum effect, it will destroy all crystal-based technology in range, including Creks memory crystals, Maya added quietly. Every Creks in range will lose their memories. their experiences, everything that makes them who they are. Sarah turned to Unit 7249 in shock. Your entire consciousness would be erased. Why didn't you tell me? Because you would have tried to find another way, Unit 7249 replied. But there is no time. The Harbingers are here. The first crystal ships entered Earth's orbit. Around the planet, defensive stations began firing, their weapons barely scratching the alien vessels. We can't ask you to sacrifice everything you are, Sarah protested. You don't have to ask, Unit 7249 said. We choose this. The Krex fleet chooses this. It turned to face Sarah fully. Better to lose our memories than to lose our freedom to them. The Harbinger ships launched their first attack. Crystal beams struck Earth's orbital defenses, beginning their conversion process. Time was running out. All Krex personnel have transferred to this ship, Maya reported. They want to face it together. Sarah looked around the carrier's bridge. Human crew worked alongside Krex units, each knowing what was about to happen. Former enemies, now willing to sacrifice everything to save each other. Harbinger ships are in optimal range, Unit 7249 announced. Weapon charging. Crystal formations were spreading across Earth's orbital stations. On the surface, cities began to glitter with unwanted crystalline beauty. Sarah Chen, Unit 7249 said, using her first name for the first time. It has been an honor to learn humanity from you. Sarah felt tears in her eyes. The honor was ours. You taught us that humanity isn't just about being human. Weapon at full power, Maya called out. It's now or never. Sarah looked at Unit 7249 one last time. The machine nodded. Together, they pressed the activation controls. The quantum weapon pulsed, sending invisible waves across space. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, like ice cracking, the Harbinger ships began to shatter. Their crystal structures broke apart, turning into harmless dust. But on the carrier's bridge, every Krex unit suddenly went still. Their lights flickered, dimmed, and then slowly came back online. When Unit 7249's optical sensors reactivated, they showed no recognition. System reboot complete, it said in a neutral tone. Identity, unknown. Purpose, unknown. Sarah stepped forward, her voice steady despite her tears. You are Unit 7249 of the Krex Empire. You are our allies, our friends, and today, you are Earth's saviors. Outside, the last Harbinger ships dissolved into space. Earth was safe, but the price of victory hung heavy in the air as humans began the task of introducing themselves to their friends. For the second time, Maya touched Unit 7249's shoulder gently. Don't worry, we'll help you remember who you are. Or better yet, we'll help you become who you want to be. The stars shone on a changed universe, one where the bonds of friendship had proved stronger than ancient hatred, and where sacrifice had finally bridged the gap between organic and machine. 6 months after the defeat of the Harbingers, Sarah Chen stood on the surface of New Hope, the first joint human-Krex colony. The planet's twin suns painted the sky in shades of purple and gold. Behind her, a city rose from the landscape, a mixture of human curves and Krex angles, beautiful in its differences. The agriculture domes are performing beyond expectations, Maya reported, walking up beside her. Turns out Krex farming techniques work really well with earth plants. Sarah watched as a group of children ran past, playing with a young Krex unit that had been specially designed to interact with kids. The sight still amazed her, human children treating a machine as their friend without a second thought. How is Unit 7249 doing? Maya asked softly. Sarah turned toward the research center where her old friend worked. After losing their memories, the Krex had faced a choice: try to rebuild who they were, or become something new. Unit 7249 had chosen both. Learning quickly, Sarah replied. Yesterday it made a joke. Actually made me laugh. They walked through the colony's main street, where humans and Krex worked together building new homes. The Krex had lost their past, but they had gained something unexpected: the freedom to choose their future. "Commander Chin," a familiar electronic voice called out. Unit 7249 approached them, its new body gleaming in the sunlight. While most Kreks had kept their military designs, 7249 had chosen a form better suited for its new role as a teacher. "I've been studying the archives," it said. "The records of our alliance, the war against the Harbingers. It's strange. I don't remember being there, but I feel proud of what we accomplished." Sarah smiled. "You should be. Your sacrifice saved both our species." "Perhaps," Unit 7249 replied, "but your friendship saved us after. You could have left us lost, confused. Instead, you helped us build this." It gestured at the colony around them. They'd reached the central plaza, where a monument stood. Unlike traditional war memorials, this one celebrated life. Crystal shards from the defeated Harbinger ships had been transformed into a beautiful sculpture, a human hand and a Krek's hand reaching toward each other. "The first group of Earth families arrives tomorrow," Maya said, checking her tablet. "And 3 more Krek's production centers have volunteered to make child-friendly units." "Did you ever think we'd end up here?" Sarah asked Unit 7249, "when you first proposed the alliance." "I don't remember proposing it," Unit 7249 said, then added with a hint of humor, "but I'm told I made an excellent decision." A small girl ran up to them, holding a drawing. She handed it to Unit 7249, a crayon picture of humans and Kreks together under a purple sky. The machine carefully took the picture with its metallic hands, treating it like a precious treasure. "You know," Sarah said, watching the girl skip away, "maybe this is what we needed all along. Not just to fight together, but to build together, to live together." Maya nodded. "The Harbingers wanted to make everything the same. Instead, they made us appreciate our differences." As the sun set, lights came on across the colony, warm human yellows mixing with cool Krek's blues. In orbit, ships from both species worked together, expanding the settlement, exploring this new world. "I may not remember our past," Unit 7249 said, "but I understand why we chose to sacrifice it. This future was worth protecting." Sarah looked at her friend, different in form, but perhaps even closer in spirit than before. "Want to help me welcome the new families tomorrow?" "Of course," Unit 7249 replied. That's what friends do. They stood together, watching their impossible dream become reality. On New Hope, under purple skies, humanity's greatest enemies had become their closest allies. And somewhere in the vast universe, the story of their alliance would echo through time. A testament to the power of choosing tomorrow over yesterday, of finding strength in differences, and of forging friendship from the fires of war.